Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to talk about The Unicorn, Season 2, Episode 3, It's the Thought That Counts. I wasn't intending to do another video on this series. The last one I did didn't perform particularly great. But when I watched this episode, I realized that it dealt quite a bit with racism in a very on-the-nose fashion for my taste, but nevertheless, it took a crack at it. And so I thought, just for funsies, I would Corman Productionize it. And yes, I've decided in my life that before I go, I'm going to make sure that that's a term that everybody uses. We open up at Michelle's daughter's 13th birthday. Michelle being played by Myelin Robinson. And so far, the Unicorn is her most notable role to date, though she did appear in 11 episodes of The Conners last year. Michelle asked her daughter what she wished for, and she responds by saying that she's going to keep it a secret because otherwise it won't come true. Wade's daughter, Grace, says, "Oh, so secretive. Very much like a Scorpio." And this kicks off a conversation about astrology and the various signs. I'm a Pisces, by the way, in case anybody was curious. This conversation is something that Delilah takes exception to. Delilah, played by Michaela Watkins, who I most recently saw in The Way Back, a Ben Affleck film. Very good picture, by the way. You should definitely check it out. Delilah thinks that all the astrological conversation is total nonsense, and that we should be placing our faith in science, DNA, those kinds of things. Wade, played by our star, Walton Goggins, is listening in on this conversation with amusement. He says that although it's silly, what's the harm? And Grace is all like, "Oh, it's silly, huh? Well, I guess you wouldn't want to know that your new girlfriend, played by Natalie Z, is also a Scorpio." And because I couldn't quite resist, I looked it up. Scorpios are supposed to be determined, sometimes problematically so. They are imaginative, intelligent, and have an independent mind. They are assertive or forceful, depending on how you take it. They are emotional and have sharp intuitive powers. They can be brave, loyal, honest, ambitious, jealous, secretive, and resentful. Wade seems surprised, asking, "How did you know that?" And as it turns out, Wade's kids have basically been cyber stalking, Wade's new girlfriend. Welcome to the 21st century. Grace's defense is that they only created the account so they could stalk her without her knowing. Those aren't her exact words, but they might as well be what she is saying. Not much of a defense there. I think you might want to quit while you're way behind. His younger daughter, Natalie, suggests that they just wanted to look out for their dad and make sure that she wasn't a crazy widow type who was taking advantage of a single father with two daughters. Quite the imagination these two have. I dig it. Delia, whose name I've now mispronounced twice, but it's not like it matters because nobody's going to watch this anyway, thinks that's ridiculous, but then asks, "Is she?" Apparently not, according to Natalie, but most Scorpios, also according to her, are serial killers. Good to know. I'll be on the lookout. And Wade is basically like, "Okay, now that we know she's not a murderer, no more snooping on Shannon." Shannon being his girlfriend, of course. Anything he wants to find out, he will find out the old-fashioned way. His daughters give him a blank look, and he responds, to their questioning gaze. I'll ask. What a concept. Actual communication and conversation as a means to gather information about someone. But then it clicks in his head. If Shannon is a Scorpio, that means her birthday is soon. And as it turns out, her birthday is in 2 days. Uh-oh. Now Wade has a dilemma. Does he plan to do something for her birthday in 2 days? Or does he just pretend like he doesn't know anything and do nothing? After the credits, Wade is still talking about this dilemma of his. If he goes too big, does he scare her off? If he goes too small, is he a jerk? Delia pushes the idea, Michelle pushes the idea that he doesn't know anything, so he doesn't have to do anything. At least as far as Shannon is concerned. But Wade basically says, I do know something. And Michelle comes back with, but you don't have to. Wade feels like if he pretends like he doesn't know, he's basically lying to her and being dishonest. Michelle finally cuts to the chase and is basically like, well, why don't you just talk to her? Find out what she would want you to do. Just follow her lead. And if you're really listening, and Wade cuts her off and was like, that I can do. I'm a very good listener. Nice little joke there. Forrest happens upon the scene, and he's got a bag full of goodies for the non-birthday children, because the last time he didn't bring gifts for the others, he got bit on the nose. The gifts turn out to be goodies from the company that he works for, little trinkets like a stress ball, which he totally gives to a 9-year-old. He throws the gifts to the kids, and none of them catch it, because they are clearly not interested in doing so. He saves the best for last, though, for Noah, Ben's son. He gives him a water gun, which Ben notices with displeasure. In case I haven't mentioned it to this point, Ben's family happens to be black. Noah is all excited because he's never had a water gun before, and for good reason. Once he's out of the picture, Ben approaches Forrest to express his displeasure. Thank you for getting my son a water gun. Now I gotta go take it away from him. Forrest is confused. Why do you have to go take it away from him? And Ben points out to a clearly dense Forrest that there's a reason he never had a water gun before. He says it looks like a gun. And Forrest is like, that's ridiculous. It doesn't look like a gun. It's neon blue, for cripe's sakes. What am I missing here? Well, quite a bit, Forrest. And Ben says, it's not about the color of the gun. It's about the color of my son. It's not safe for him to be wandering around waving that thing around. And Forrest finally gets it. This thread is actually the reason that I began to do this video in the first place. Forrest realizes he's screwed up, and he thinks he would have been better off taking the bite on the nose. We cut to Forrest and Delia at night, and Forrest is upset with himself. How could he be so stupid with everything that's going on in the world? Now, I note with interest that the unicorn is addressing racism and what happened with George Floyd without ever mentioning him by name, but not dealing with the coronavirus. The show that I regularly deal with and talk about, This Is Us, dealt with both. And it was going to be interesting for me to see how the shows dealt with all these topics and everything that's been going on in recent times. The unicorn has decided to skip dealing with the coronavirus, but still deal with the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd stuff that's been going on. I'm not arguing for which approach is better, but it is definitely interesting to note. Delia tries to reassure him and say, I'm sure it's not as bad as it seems. I mean, if it were a problem, Michelle would have called me. Forrest is not comforted by this. He asks, "How can you be so sure about that?" And she responds that we talk about everything. And Forrest responds, "You don't know that you talk about everything because you only talk about the things that you talk about." As crazy as that sounds, that logic actually holds up. She responds, "That's absurd." And Forrest is like, "Oh, really now? I thought it was absurd too until I stepped into a steaming pile of my own white privilege." And this makes her think, have I been making the same mistake with Michelle all these years? Have I been microaggressing? And she remembers that every time she sees Michelle, she's like, "Hey girl, what's up?" And whereas before, Forrest was the only one losing sleep over this, now they both are. We cut to a scene with Wade and Shannon. And Wade has decided to just cut straight to the chase and bring up the fact that he knows that it's her birthday. He does so in a subtle fashion, though not really. And I must note that Wade was really quick to sell his daughters down the river. Right down to telling her that they created a fake social media account to spy on her. Shannon responds that she's impressed and a little bit frightened. And you should be. Women are scarily good at this kind of thing. My friend Stacy should be working for the FBI or the CIA or whatever intelligence organization she chooses. And Wade's girls have clearly gotten the jump on becoming just those sort of girls. Shannon tells him that just so he knows, she's not really a birthday person. She just likes to stay at home and let the day go by just like it's any other day. But does she really mean it? Or is it a trap? We cut to a scene with Dila and Michelle. Dila is in the process of trying to broach the subject that came up with Forrest, and she's making a fool of herself while doing it. But you know what? That's okay. I said in my This Is Us video that by being so concerned with making fools of herself or saying the wrong thing, we often end up saying nothing at all. These conversations are inherently awkward, and we aren't going to get anywhere by not having them. She wants to know if there have been other microaggressions or macroaggressions or just plain old aggressions. Michelle responds, "I hear you, and we can do that. We can have that conversation, but does it have to be right now?" And Delia says, "No, we don't have to do that right now. Whenever you're comfortable." "Right now, maybe." Michelle says no. Wade enters the house to pick up the girls. And Wade triumphantly says that Shannon hates birthdays. And the girls are all like, "Oh, that's funny. She never mentioned that on her various multiple social media platforms." But Michelle says, "Well, now she knows you know. And she said that you don't have to do anything. So case closed." But is it really? Wade certainly doesn't think so. He says, "No, case open. I can't do nothing for her birthday." And Delia says that he can, because she specifically said that you don't have to, and probably shouldn't, and she doesn't want you to. Wade leaves the scene pretty convinced that he does in fact need to do something. And after he leaves, Michelle says, "Wow, what a softie. How like a Gemini." Well, let's see for a moment if she's right. According to Google, Geminis are adaptable. They are easygoing and adjustable. Outgoing. They are typically enthusiastic and social beings. Intelligent. The reason Geminis have interesting things to say is they are highly intelligent. They are also indecisive, impulsive, unreliable, and nosy. This Wade guy sounds like a jerk. Nowhere in there does it mention him being a softie. I guess it might somewhere, though. So, who knows? But Delia once again takes exception to this and says, "Oh, you people, way to put your foot in your mouth." And she makes a point of mentioning that she didn't mean it quite like that. Astrology people. And this awkward little scene comes to a close. We cut to Wade with Forrest buying a plant, or thinking about buying a plant for Shannon. Because everybody loves a plant. Plants are thoughtful and not extravagant. Hey, he's just a plant guy, dropping off a plant on a day that happens to be your birthday. It's the perfect non-gift gift. Forrest, who looks like he's chewing on his liver, and honestly, I'm surprised that he was even listening to anything that was going on in the scene at all, says that he should have bought Forrest, not Forrest, Noah, a plant. Wade, who knows perfectly well what that's about, says, because he's 11, stop beating yourself up. And Forrest says, I just didn't know. I didn't know you couldn't give a water gun to a BLACK boy. And Wade asks the natural question, why did you just spell that? And Forrest responds, he doesn't know where the line is anymore, and he doesn't want to screw anything up anymore. And Wade responds that it'll be fine. Ben is their friend. Forrest goes on to say that he works in HR. He trains people on implicit bias. He should know better than this. I get where you're coming from, but I would also point out that it is extremely hard to see your own biases until they are pointed out to you. And Forrest said, I thought I was woke. But his blind spot is thinking that he didn't have a blind spot. Well, now you do know that. And that's important to understand. Instead of sitting here beating yourself up about this issue, you should be using it as a teachable moment for yourself. This is how you get better and do better. And Wade responds, yeah, it's tough. I remember the moment that Ben wouldn't even leave his house and go for a walk without his identification. And Forrest responds, right, because he might get stopped. And then Forrest expresses incredulousness at Wade being more woke than him. And you know what? That's a good point. How is the guy who played Shane Vendrell, an extremely racist character on The Shield, and practically a neo-Nazi, though he never really seemed to believe in any of that stuff, in Justified, as Wade Boyd, how has he become more woke than anybody? And Wade responds, you shouldn't judge people by the car they drive. Well, there you go, Forrest, screwing up again. Wade then solves his problem by finding a key lime plant. She works with food, I work with plants. This is both. Perfect. And I might even get a pie out of it. And Forrest, who's still sulking. Stalking is an entirely different concept. Anyway, he was like, if I put more thought into my gifts, yeah, good point there. If you hadn't just grabbed a bunch of crap from your office, you might not have messed things up with Ben. And Wade says, things with Ben will be fine, but you might want to make it up with Noah. He holds a grudge. What, is he like a Taurus or something? This gives Forrest the idea to buy Noah a gift and show up at Ben's house with it in hand. But it's not from Forrest. It's from Ben, at least according to Forrest himself. It turns out to be a Nintendo Switch. And once again, Ben is pissed off. Way to go, Forrest! Michelle runs into Noah on his way out of the scene, and Michelle asks Forrest, how does my son have a new video game? Ben looks pretty uncomfortable and like he wants nothing to do with this, just kind of points at Forrest, and Forrest is like, it's because I'm rededicating myself. And Michelle is like, rededicating yourself to what? And Forrest very quietly says, to exploring our differences. And we're gonna do this through a Nintendo Switch, you say, huh? That's fascinating. Michelle begins to point out that if he's really truly concerned with rededicating himself to this, then it's gonna take a lot more than a Nintendo Switch. And then she cuts herself off and says she's not involving herself in this one. She dealt with her study group, and she's not even halfway through Delia's mile-long email asking how she can help. And she says the same thing that Randall did in the This Is Us Season 5 premiere. She is exhausted. Ben, who's annoyed and frustrated at this point, tells Forrest that they need to go and talk. Forrest jumps to the conclusion that Ben is in fact breaking up with him. And that's usually what that phrase means, but not in this case. Wade shows up at Shannon's door with a key lime plant. And what do you know it? Shannon is having a birthday party, complete with a birthday hat. She hears a knock at the door and says, hey, if you guys got me a stripper, you don't know me at all. But nope, it's a very shocked Wade. And Shannon is like, oh boy, I know this looks bad. Shannon begins to say, this isn't what it looks like. And then is like, yeah, it's a party. And then Wade says that she doesn't need to explain. He shouldn't have come in the first place. Wade tries to leave, but before going, or attempting to go, he gives her the plant that he brought. And Shannon is like, well, thank you, but please don't go. But Wade basically says, nah, it's fine. And her guests are basically insisting that she come back in to drink shots. And Shannon is like, please come in for at least one drink so I can explain. I can't wait to hear this explanation. We cut to Forrest and Ben. And Ben is basically like, you bought him a $350 gaming system. You're doing too much. And Forrest responds, I don't think I'm doing enough. Forrest, I hear you with this dilemma, but I'm not convinced you thought this solution through. In fact, I know for a fact that you didn't. Exactly what is a gaming system supposed to fix here? I get the idea was to basically fix things between Noah and Ben for having to take away the water gun, but this is very extremely harebrained. Forrest goes on to say, and rather ask, what books can he read? What organizations can he support? And this very much reminds me of Kate asking via text Randall the same question. Forrest wants to do better. And then Ben points out, but this, what you're doing right here, is not better. You're putting all of your guilt on me. Because you want me to make you feel better about the things that I have to deal with. And that is white guilt, explained, by the way. Ben goes on to say, Forrest, I love you. I know you mean well, but I can't do your work for you. And Forrest decides to make a really dumb comment. He knew it was tough for black people, but he didn't think it was like that for Ben. Because he's making the mistaken assumption that success matters when it comes to these issues. And Ben says that, oh, So you think that racial injustice only affects the black people that you don't know. Michelle, who's been eavesdropping at this point, decides to come back into the scene and basically tell Forrest, look, we know this is new to you, but we've been dealing with this forever. Do you know how often that I am followed in the store, or somebody touches my hair without permission? And this actually came up in one of the episodes of this season of This Is Us, and it flabbergasts me that anybody would touch someone else's hair without asking. That's actually a thing that occurs. And Michelle is about to go on a very long rant before she decides, nope, I'm not going to get started, and exits the conversation. Ben asks, do you know what you can do? And Forrest responds, yes, please tell me what I can do. And Ben simply responds, listen. Forrest seems to get it for a moment, but then is like, listen to who? And Ben responds, to me, to black people in general. And believe us, because we get told that we are imagining things when we talk about these issues, or that when we protest, we shouldn't, or that we're doing it wrong. Even though that is the only way in which anything has ever changed. Forrest quietly says, well, I believe you. And Ben says, thank you. Because I got a lot on my plate right now. For instance, I've been really busy taking toys away from my kids. He's joking, of course. And Forrest, laughing, says, too soon. And Ben, laughing with him, says, hey, if you do the work, I'll be right there with you. And then Michelle from the background says, hey, there actually is something you can do for us. You can take back that Nintendo Switch and take the blame for it. We cut back to Wade at the party, looking uncomfortable, and Shannon brings him a drink, and she starts to explain. And Wade, being magnanimous, says that she doesn't have to, that he should have just taken the hint that she doesn't want him there. And, he's being a grade A guy about this. A good egg, understanding. The total opposite of what his astrological sign would suggest. But Shannon tells him that's just not the case. There's more to it than that. Shannon decides at that moment to show him what it's truly about. And she points out to the partygoers that the man she's talking to is Wade. And they pretty much prove their case. They basically start catcalling him and telling him that he's the guy that she won't shut up about, and asking him to turn around so they can see his butt. Yep, that's the reason why Shannon lied to him. It was too soon in the relationship for that. She knew that her knucklehead friends would be poking at him, and she didn't want to scare him away. And Wade says simply that he understands. And he says, boy, wait till you meet my friends. No kidding on that one. So Shannon asks him, so you're not scared away? And Wade's like, no, of course not. He doesn't know what this is yet. But he does know that he likes her. And he thinks about her a lot. And he wants her to know that on her birthday and any other day. And they share a kiss. And that about does it for my comments on this episode. This went on for quite a bit longer than I was intending. But oh well. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at corpproductions.com. You can join my Facebook group, Corman Productions. You can buy something from my Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can like, share, and comment on this video. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.